Box office gross revenue, Group 6.
The movie industry grossed $38.6 billion in 2016, and $11.4 billion came from the US-Canada market. Overall growth of the movie industry is decreasing, so production companies need to be more careful spending money to develop movies. Our challenge was how we can better predict what makes a movie successful. If movie production companies can tell what factors make movies more profitable, they can be more competitive in the industry. Some of the specific questions that we looked into: do higher budgets correspond to higher revenue, such as Paranormal Activity that had a very low budget but made a lot of revenue? How much does the movie's genre affect its revenue? Like, do comedies make more than horrors, movies, etc.? Does the actual rating, like G, PG, affect revenue? Does being produced by a specific production company imply higher revenue, like Disney movies? Does movie length affect revenue? And do good movies actually make more money?
In order to solve these problems, we used the NBC Universal Analytical Dataset from the 2018 AIS Student Chapter Competition. We had to clean this data, so in order to do that, we had to take out all non-zero box office values, so we could eliminate all movies that did not get any revenue at the box office, because those would not be useful when predicting box office revenue. We also deleted all foreign films, as the revenue that is listed in the data set as U.S. domestic gross revenue and does not account for foreign revenue, therefore did not have U.S. gross domestic box office revenues. We accomplished this by only keeping movies from the top U.S. production companies. Movies with only the 4 standard ratings, G, PG, PG-13, and R, were kept as well, because others did not have wide theatrical releases. In order to adjust the data, we created binary variables for each genre and theatrical rating. For example, if it were an action film, it received a 1 under action films. Films had up to 3 genres. The biggest problem was the realization that the gross revenue and budget were denominated in US dollars of their release year, and not adjusted for inflation. Using the US inflation calculator, we readjusted this to be in 2017 US dollars. We also removed movies that were still in theaters and removed movies with non-theatrical releases in the US.
Some of the tools that we used for this project were Microsoft Excel for storing the data, because that was the program that the data was presented to us in, SAS Enterprise Guide for analysis, and we used the linear regression function for that. We also used Tableau for some sweet visualizations. As a movie gets longer, the gross revenue actually gets higher, which can explain why we have been seeing an increase in runtime in recent movies. Probably the biggest insight gained is that the budget explains 37% of box office revenue. As expected, R-rated movies gross less than G, PG, and PG-13 movies. This could be because it is less likely that families will go and see R-rated movies with their kids.
The original goal of this project was to see how well we could predict box office revenue using given variables. The problem with this is that the given variables explain less than 50% of the total variation of box office gross revenue. What we did find is a few very key insights that have specific business application. One of these is that Metacritic and IMDb ratings did not explain much of the variation in box office gross revenue. This means that it is not necessarily the best movies that make the most money. There are 3 genres: adventure, fantasy, and sci-fi, that all have a positive, significant coefficient. This means that the demand for these genres is higher, therefore there is more money to be made. Only 2 US-based production companies have significant positive relationships with revenue: Disney and DreamWorks. This makes sense due to the popularity of these 2 production studios, especially with young children. The largest insight, though, is the budget. The budget has a coefficient of 1.24, which means that for every dollar spent, 24 cents in profit is earned. This gives a huge advantage to production companies with large amounts of capital. In conclusion, budget is the most significant variable, meaning a company that can afford a high budget movie should, as this usually equates to more profits. Genres such as adventure, sci-fi, and fantasy should also be encouraged, as these movies have higher demand than others. Movies should also be longer, as people want more of an experience in the movie theater. If only there were a high-budget, long sci-fi movie coming out in a theater near you.